Madam Speaker, today I rise in support of my Amendment 194. 194 is a very simple piece of legislation amendment. It would prohibit TRICARE from covering sex reassignment surgeries and hormone treatment for transgender individuals. The most recent numbers tell us that the Department of Defense has performed over 240 gender reassignment surgeries, costing taxpayers approximately $3.1 million. Unfortunately, that's just a small part of the costs associated with this transaction. The department has also spent over $11.5 million on psychotherapy. That's it, psychotherapy for service members with gender dysphoria. The amount of funds paid out for this psychotherapy shows that the surgery alone cannot solve the root issue for these individuals. This does nothing to help our troops continue to be the most effective fighting force on earth and is nothing but a distraction and a waste of valuable taxpayers' dollars. The government has no business funding these procedures on the taxpayers' dime. The question that must be asked is whether we're having trans individuals makes the United States a more lethal force and whether it helps recruit the best and most effective talent for the United States military. And the answer to that is a clear and resounding no. A report commissioned by General Mattis found that service members with claims of gender dysphoria are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide than other service members. It also found that these individuals are 9 times more likely to have negative mental health episodes than other service members. As Thomas Spohr, a former Army Lieutenant General, put it, if those with gender dysphoria are at a much higher risk of suicide, crippling anxiety, or mental breakdowns than their peers, those serving next to them will be reluctant to rely on them. Permitting them to serve also violates the principle of not placing individuals at greater risk of injury in harm's way. Madam Speaker, to summarize this, anything that does not contribute to making our fighting force the most effective fighting force on earth is nothing more than a distraction. And I will not ask the people of Montana or the United States to pay for it. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I claim the time in opposition to the amendment and ask to yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman has 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to this amendment. Trans service members have served and served successfully for years. In fact, trans people are even more likely to serve in the U.S. military than cisgender people. So it's mind-boggling that we would want to deter and discriminate against a group of people who have proven their patriotism and deep commitment to our country. All of us are well aware that we're facing steep military recruitment and retention challenges. This amendment will worsen this crisis by pushing transgender service members out of the military. And that's because gender-affirming care is necessary and medically backed. Care that gives you the ability to be your true, authentic self is primary care, and it's not something that should be easily dismissed. If our service members constantly worry about their right to exist, their ability to serve our country is jeopardized, and it harms our readiness and ability to respond quickly and effectively to national security challenges. I'm not alone in this. Secretary Austin agrees that allowing people to serve as their authentic selves is the right and the smart thing to do for our military operations. That's why I urge my colleagues to do the right thing for our values and our readiness and oppose this harmful amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Montana is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me reiterate these numbers again. If these individuals are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide, 8 times more likely to attempt suicide, and 9 times more likely to have negative mental health episodes than other service members. The United States military veterans are experiencing 21 suicides a day, and we are doing everything in the Veterans Affairs Committee to reduce that number. Why in the world are we considering bringing individuals in that are going to increase that number? If these individuals are that troubled on an ordinary day without the pressures of war, why would we risk our nation's security on them in wartime? It just simply does not make sense. Allowing this radical, Trans agenda to infiltrate our military will put our service members and my constituents in harm's way and will make our country more vulnerable than it's ever been in modern history. My common sense amendment would save the taxpayers millions of dollars and help protect our service members as well as our country, and maybe save a lot of lives as well. I reserve, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose? The gentlewoman is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished ranking member of the Armed Services Committee.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Chair. The ignorance contained in these comments is really breathtaking. Transgender people who have normal, regular health care are no more likely to commit suicide than anybody else. So basically, the statistics he's showing, once somebody identifies as having a problem, they're more likely to have a problem. I mean, that would be like saying we've identified that, service members who complain of PTSD symptoms are more likely to commit suicide. The point is to get proper care for transgender people, and you don't have these issues. It is the ignorance that has prevented them from getting that proper care. And by the way, the overwhelming majority of transgender people don't need any of this, okay? Any more than any of us do. But when they need it just like when anybody else does. And to Ms. Jacobs' point, we need to recruit people. Being bigoted against transgender people takes a huge population out of the recruitment. This is a very simple, easy thing to do and deal with. And again, I really want to emphasize, not every transgender person needs this care, all right? If you have a problem, yes, you are more likely to have a problem, but that is true of anybody, regardless of your gender. We need transgender people to serve in the military. This amendment will make that more difficult and should be defeated.
The gentleman's time has expired. For the gentleman from
Madam
Montana.
Speaker, could I request how much time I have remaining?
1¼ minutes.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, what this is just shows to the extent that the Biden administration has been pushing this agenda into our military, and it is weakening our military. It is not making it stronger. We have drag shows taking place at Malmstrom Air Force Base. There are 150 ICBM missiles that are being controlled by that Air Force Base and by these individuals. I don't want someone who doesn't know if they are a man or a woman with their hand on a missile button. We have explicit library books on display for children at Malmstrom Air Force Base. The U.S. Navy's Digital Ambassador Program featuring drag queen posting on TikTok. The Department of Defense is paying for travel expenses and is offering up to 21 days of leave for soldiers and their dependents to get abortions. Again, let me tell you that anything that is not focused on making the United States military the most effective fighting force on earth is nothing more than a distraction, and we should not be paying for it. I won't ask the people of Montana to pay for it, and I will not ask the people across the United States to pay for it. I reserve.
Your time has expired. The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from California.
Can I inquire how much time we have left?
2¾ minutes.
Thank you. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I thank Ranking Member Smith for his comments, and I would like to emphasize that transgender people are people. They are much more than statistics. They are people serving our country. They are people who care and are patriotic. They are more likely to harm themselves and suffer from mental health challenges due to the harmful rhetoric they hear from elected officials denying their right to exist. My youngest sibling, my brother, is trans, and he is one of the most responsible people I know. I would be thrilled if he wanted to serve our country, and you should be too. With that, I will yield 1½ minutes to my colleague from Texas, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized.
I'm on the, let me thank the gentlelady as well. I'm on the floor again, holding up the Constitution, which should not be eliminated for the fighting force of Americans who have been declared by nations around the world as the strongest, most powerful fighting force in the world. And whatever my friend says on the other side of the aisle, I have no basis for his statistics. No one has undermined the force of the men and women. Let me pay tribute to them. Equal protection of the law says basically a health care issue is a health care issue. Trans people have health care issues. Trans children have health care issues. It is an outrage that we should deny Americans who want to die on a battlefield the right to get TRICARE. TRICARE, maternal mortality, black maternal mortality, is more prone to African American women. Should they be in the military denied because they have a black maternal mortality, more apt to have babies that die? No, they want to die on the field too, or they want to be able to wear the uniform. And so I have never been able to understand how you can deny people health care. It is health care. Let me say it again. It is health care. And for trans children, it is more your denial, your denunciation, your contempt, your hatred that drives any to do anything toward themselves. It could be a heterosexual and you've condemned them and they may be prone to suicide. This is not apt to those who happen to be trans. Please, I beg of this floor, do not pass these amendments because the Constitution will be trampled on. Health care,
The gentlewoman's time has
is
expired.
health care.
The gentleman from California.
I reserve.
Only time remaining.
Oh,
How much?
Okay, I yield 1 minute to my
The
colleague.
gentlewoman has 25 seconds remaining.
I yield 25 seconds.
0.5. Sorry.
45?
0.5. Oh, 45. Sorry, 45 seconds. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Looking at this amendment, if you just boil it down, what it's doing is degrading the scope of coverage for military service members covered by TRICARE for themselves and their dependents. Okay, so what we're doing is we're basically saying if you wear the uniform in this country, your level of insurance is going to be less than Americans in the civilian sector or in other forms of employment-based insurance. We have been fighting on the Armed Services Committee to raise the level of coverage and to create parity with the civilian sector as a way of recruiting people in the military. This goes backwards. This will be a first for the NDAA to degrade the TRICARE health insurance coverage for military members, people who wear the uniform of this country. Oppose this amendment.
So expired.